Well, I do appreciate everybody joining us today. And this is a great opportunity for Fujifilm and Storage Field Day. And I really have going to continue with kind of the same conversation that Nami started with and what Object Archive is, a little bit about why it's important in the market. And let me address these things as we go. So first off, I'm Chris Kehoe, Director of Sales and Engineering for Data Management Solutions within Fujifilm. So Nami kind of gave you a great overview of where Fujifilm has come from. And we have the name of film in our product, in our name, and we have the background of thin film manufacturing and development starting back in 1934. Kind of a great project to kind of think about is that tape is actually utilizing technologies that we started developing a long time ago. And you can see in this deck here, we actually started building tape for computer systems. Those were 9-track tapes back in 1965. Quite a bit different technology today. And I know that Rich will get into a little bit more detail in the following presentation about the technology and the evolution of digital tape. So, but just to give you a little perspective, we are continuing from this point in 1965 with the business, and it's been a very great thing to see. So let me rehash a little bit of what Nami just started sharing about Fujifilm Object Archive. This is a product that has been introduced into the market basically last year. It is a product for managing long-term data. It helps customers today inside of their digital transformation to build a data platform for archival that has the capability of joining in that hybrid cloud, being part of a S3 and an API-based protocol that they're used to with cloud services. And it looks and feels just like you were working with Glacier, but it is inside your data center. And it does a couple other things to just highlight here. It simply integrates into the other object storage environments that we're seeing a lot of growth in that space where object storage has been used for an active archive tier. And we're looking to help offset that data set that's in the object storage, pushing it out to a colder tier. And inside of many different workflows, that process of tiering from an active to a cold archive is extremely valuable, both from a scaling, a cost, and a protection level. So those are the three kinds of things that we always hear as the biggest challenge in the industry when we talk to our customers, talk to people that have the responsibility for maintaining the integrity of the organization by protecting the data that it runs off of.
Chris,
so yes,
question, Enrico. So, what are your customers? I mean, large enterprises or also service provider that are using your solution as a second tier for their object storage services, for example?
That's a great question. Yes, thank you for that question. Our customers are both. We have a little bit more. I'll talk a little bit more about these use cases, and we'll go into the details of that. And I appreciate that question because it is going to be leading into a couple of slides I have coming up. If we and when we look at our use of tape technology as a scaling technology, it will provide a cost-effective, extremely reliable medium for long-term data storage. People talk about the challenges of long-term data storage and the migration. Well, that's another thing that we've taken care of in migrating tape from one generation to the next within this platform. It does not need to worry about. Customers can just load some new media, new generations, and it will migrate the data for them. And as Nami had already mentioned, security and the air gap inside of the system is probably one of the biggest and largest, most talked about challenges inside of all IT today is how do we protect against the threats that we see, external threats, internal threats, and utilizing our tape and the ability to have air gap and full chain of custody really provides a very secure product, and secure data set for the customer. And the last thing, just as a kind of to top off what we're trying to help out with our customers as far as scale security, is to give them a predictable cost basis for how they will grow. And when they use their data, they're not continuing to pay for looking at their data, reading their data.
Hey,
so these
hey
are
Chris.
all, yes.
So the solution is connected to like a cloud tier from a backup solution. Is that how this works? I mean, so
Yeah.
if a backup solution decides that some data is cold or can be taken out to the cloud, rather than writing, they would normally write S3 to an object storage someplace. They could write S3 to your object archive. Is that how this works?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, and a lot of what I'll show you, because this is going to be a little bit more of a technical conversation as I go through the next set of slides, you'll see where Object Archive really fits inside the technology space. In general, what customers could do with the product today is implement Object Archive like they have Glacier running inside of their own network. And that could be another location. It could be inside a single data center. It could be a partner that's allowing them to host this product as a service for themselves. So it does meet kind of all of that cloud look and feel. It integrates with the S3 APIs in the same manner that the other public cloud service technologies also have integrated it. So the integration point and the use of the product is very analogous to somebody building up their own private cloud, or even as the other question had been made, a service provider building a cloud instance for their customers to kind of build kind of a multi-tenant approach here. So,
all right, thanks.
Yep. So I appreciate these questions and I love them. So we'll keep going with them as we go. So thank you for those. So I'm just going to go skip over to this next slide, and Nami kind of alluded to these, 4 or 5 areas of focus that we see extremely good adoption of the product at this point. And really it is in the areas that have classic content that needs to be managed for a very long time and very kind of infrequently accessed. As we mentioned, and you kind of see in the diagram below here, we have the capability of kind of being in the tiering of the data, and in the landing place for the data set that we're talking about is to sustain it for years. It's but still have access that is better access, quicker access, and faster access to your data than maybe utilizing some of the colder archive services that are in the public cloud sector. So this is one of the areas that we're looking at: preservation, the scientific research, all this data that gets generated continuously, and they don't have time to review it. They just basically research on it, and they need to keep it for forever, basically. Our multi-tenant managed services is a very large play for the Object Archive. We do support multi-tenancy, and whether we talk about multi-tenancy from a discrete, mapping it right down to discrete media, or multi-tenancy where we actually can service extremely efficiently by sharing that media across as many customers as needed. There are tunings for that. And then we have a way to really...
So, Chris, the multi-tenant thing brings up the encryption question. You guys support encryption in the archive as well as the tape, or just on the tape, or?
Yeah, it's fully encrypted. The archive, in our perspective, is just on the tape. We have a metadata. We do manage metadata separately, and that is inside of a database, and it is end-to-end encrypted from the data moving on the network to the data sitting at rest. So that is what we do today. And that
is the server solution there that's in front of the tape library, is that a tier or is it a cache?
yeah, we'll get right into that in just a couple slides.
All right.
Yeah, thank you though. It is a great question, and we'll be right there. So anyway, as I mentioned, also within the stack here, active archiving is kind of one of the parts. And so Ray, this is the slide that will answer a few of those questions. I appreciate that. So really, what we have is the server is any server. It's running on a x86 compatible server running Linux kind of platforms. We end up with a server with many components inside, and I'll just kind of step right through that. First off, what we have is a data coming in from the network, and it's landing on buckets that are being presented by our storage server, just another function inside of the system. That's the S3 compatible server. These buckets present the data out to the network. They're discrete access points for the system, and we can support up to 10,000 buckets on the system. So we can provide kind of that multi-tenant capability inside our system, where a lot of the intelligence and the ability for this product to be extremely efficient in its use of tape technology comes from how we manage the data. It lands on our system in disk cache, and actually, just be clear here, it's not spinning disk. It's all flash based, and then it gets packed. And then packing is just an efficiency process that we're doing to take the metadata and the object, pack them together, write them out to tape, and then allow the tape server to do its job, which is basically formatting the data, writing it out to these tape drives. We can make simultaneous copies up to 3 at a time within the system to support that multi-copy and even off-site, off-prem kind of storage for that air gap. And then, so what we have is a server controlling, and I say a server, it's not our server. We support any of these servers. It's a software package running on CentOS, controlling a tape library that provides the ability to write the data in, land on tape, and then read the data back as it's coming off the tape very efficiently.
So Chris, does it support replication between local tape libraries and remote tape libraries and that sort of thing?
Yeah, we have some of the replication points, because what we're essentially trying to do is become a bucket presented on the network. Our point of replication, if you want to call it, is really at the tape level where we're providing those copies. However,
so we have multiple copies of the tape data itself onto separate cartridges within a single library.
Yes, and we do have customers on the front end who said, well, our replication point is going to be maybe in data center A and then to data center B. But what they're instead doing is taking their initial data sets as they're writing, and they're spinning a copy, they're sticking a copy in bucket on data center A and a bucket on data center B.
I got it.
And so they're coming in from the data source, writing to us, as well as to another target that we have in another data center. So they're creating that point of replication. And the nice thing is that gives them discrete buckets, discrete access for that data at each location without logically tying the data together, which also helps in the sense that if a customer was looking for that, sometimes what the logical disconnection does in those data sets, it also logically protects the data from replicated errors. And that can be a point where if we had data sets just coming into our system and then we replicate, anything that's coming in as an error on our system would replicate to the other system. But if we're getting the data, we're moving that responsibility upstream, fewer components, fewer errors potential. That's just one of the areas that right now we're in this position. And this product will scale in different ways, and I'll get to those as we get into a little more details. So just important to know, we are supporting the newer LTO technology platforms, LTO 7, 8, 9 when it releases. and the IBM Enterprise tape as well. As it mentions here, we do support pretty much everybody's tape libraries. We're continuously testing new ones as we need to to get on supported compatibility matrices from all the vendors. So what is this? What is this on the bottom here? This is our OT format. This is just kind of an example of how we're packing the objects and writing them to tape. And what that really is doing is just says, we pack a bunch of objects together so they get written efficiently. And then on the read, we restore all those objects together. So then if you're actually looking for the next object that's part of that sequence of data, it's already been restored. And that's just sort of part of the intelligence that we're trying to apply here. The smart cache is doing that job, and it is intended to kind of continue. We're continuing our development about predictive read, predictive writes, and stuff that are going to happen within the system. That's just an ongoing thing that we're using that system for. So,
what is the level of compatibility with S3 that you have today?
I'm sorry, would you repeat that question,
level
please?
Of compatibility with S3. I mean, do you support the full spectrum of APIs, just the basic APIs?
Yep, I have all the APIs listed in the later section. If you want, we can, if you would mind, I can present that to you then. You can see that we have, we do support the multi-part uploads, the, very, very much, it's a compatible, S3 compatible API with the AWS S3. And it has pretty much all the supports for versioning multi-part that people are using today from this standpoint. We're using the e-tagging as a integrity check as the data is being written and read from the system. So we're continuing to support as much of the S3 API that we can within our system to provide a sustainable kind of protected archive.
Another question that I didn't understand earlier. So what happens, I mean, you're storing metadata and data on tape, and you keep a copy on the appliance just for caching, right?
We copy, yeah, the data will actually get purged from the appliance after it's written to tape to just allow for more data to be written. The data, when it's restored, we follow the same conventions as the S3 or the Glacier restore convention, which says you can actually determine the length of time you land on the cache for restored data. It becomes a workflow dependent kind of setting. So we have the capability of setting that up, or the customer can choose that as they do the restore of that data set. So.
No, my question was about, so when I need metadata, so for listing and things like that, so you have a copy of all the data on the appliance. So how do you protect the metadata from a failure? So because I have exabytes of data in the backend, how can I manage, I mean, all the metadata? So there is a copy, there is a second appliance ready to go or something like that? Sure.
I have a little picture of the architecture of what environment would look like for that. We have an HA clustered environment that allows the Mongo database replication to be kind of self-protected. We also document the entire process of, if you just had a single instance of this, of how you would go about the protection of each of the databases on the system. So they can be protected outside the system. And in the future, we have plans to even allow our own tape within the system to be a protection point for those data sets or for the databases. So,
okay.
So I do cover a little bit of that in this deck. So I know you guys have great questions, and I know I'll probably get to almost everything. So I appreciate you. Keep them coming. They're great questions. So where?
Just another question.
Yes, please.
Just to get this product placed, how big does a customer have to be to get any value?
Absolutely, great question. So we have customers in the hundreds of terabytes that are in evaluation of the product right now. Our product starts at a petabyte in licensing, so there's no and then it goes up from there. The scale on this product is pretty seamless as it goes up into the many tens to hundreds of petabyte range, and that's due to the clustered architecture that sits behind it. But we can start are licensing at a petabyte. And by the way, it does include media with that license. So Fujifilm media does come in as part of that.
When you're saying a petabyte, is that a petabyte of stored data or a petabyte of available tape in the library?
Great question. It's a petabyte of stored data, and it comes with 2 petabytes of available tape. And that's all native capacity. So one of the things that we developed that we have open sourced inside of Fujifilm is this OT format that is analogous to LTFS. This is built specifically for object and the metadata. But if you understand LTFS a little bit on the tape technology, the reason this is important is that we're talking about object storage, coming in upstream to us from places that have billions of objects. We had to develop something that was going to handle the count of the objects, or the file, if you want to talk about it that way, better than LTFS. But we've built this in a way that will allow for a scale on tape that is really kind of unaccounted for right now, that LTFS would be limited to do. So the reason that we have this is because it is a fully self-described tape technology. This is kind of just core to the product. It's published. The entire spec has been published, and we also have a reader that is available for the CentOS and Windows platforms that is simply give you the ability to read any tape that you write outside of our product. But this is called the OT format, and it's specifically designed and optimized for the packaging of those objects on tape. So.
Okay, so Chris, sorry, a question just about the indexing side of things. So you've kind of got an indexing database in the main system, but you are putting enough information onto the tape similar to LTFS, so they can be self-contained.
Absolutely.
One issue with backup systems is that master catalog system. If that gets damaged or lost, what sort of impact would that have on the system? What kind of rebuild time are we talking about of having to re-index everything?
Sure. Yeah, and that is a great question. Obviously, so in worst case scenario, I'm just going to start at that point because that's the hardest one. We're talking about reading each tape to recover the metadata into a database. That would be a long process, right? Because we're going through and scouring every tape for all the metadata, but that is an automatic process that we can do within our system. In the much better use case, we're talking about putting clustered systems together that provide the high availability of those databases that maintain that index, including the capability of backing that data up outside of the system onto the network. So that would be something we would ask our customers to involve their normal backup and business continuity planning to contain the ability to back up and restore the databases that we have. So that's,
okay.
But it would be, yeah. It's kind of a
wise to
manner.
back up that database somewhere and preferably don't point it back at the same tape library.
No, understood that. It's one of those areas that we are working towards being able to be more protective of our system within itself. But as it stands with the high availability clustering and the external backup target that we would require, it is a protected system as much as pretty much any of them are. So at this point, so we're pretty much in the list. And the worst case would be we can recover a database off of all the tapes. So great question. Thank you.
Can I ask you another question about tape management in the backend? So how do you migrate data between different generations of tapes? I mean, if I have now LTO 7 and maybe I will have LTO 8 or 9, and I want to keep my data, read the data and just to for the integrity, and then copy it to a new tape to save space.
Mm-hmm.
How can is it automatic?
Yes. It is automatic. We have that in the product for our migration processes. So it's right now, and I say that, and I want to be clear here. It's in the product when LTO9 launches, we have a correlating launch for this capability to be insert new media, apply the migration policies to the selected media that you want to migrate, or it could be everything. And then it will be a background process that will just run and do the migration for you and then tell you when you can remove your old media. So,
okay.
Yeah. It's intended to be very low touch. The customer really can just push media in the library and select everything and set go. So Object Archive has security that really goes beyond a lot of technologies that we see today that fit into the hybrid cloud environment, and where we really can gain our largest protection against the threat is in the physical air gap of using tape media. This is something that's always existed with tape. But when we talk about the ransomware and we talk about those threats that we're seeing daily in the news, this is even more and more important. So when we focus on the security of the product, ransomware is probably the most significant factor in protecting data. The ransomware threat is creating probably the most significant need to have air gap in your environment somewhere, so that you have disconnected data sets that are immutable. And this really comes back to our kind of just one of the value chains. I have listed how the other areas of the product really protect against the data, or the data exposures, the integrity or loss. And this is really just an example of where and how tape and the product itself will protect against these threats here. So just want to say that because it's an extremely important piece, that it doesn't even matter if customers are using tape today, they're hearing about air gap and the significance of that. And there's a lot of technologies in the market today that are trying to say they have air gap, but they're still connected to the internet or connected to the network, and they don't actually have an air gap. So this is a really important play. Huge value that Fujifilm has always had with our media. It's nothing new, but it just is something that's getting a lot of airplay. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that. And I don't think anybody's really has any questions about this specific stuff, but if you do, please let me know. So the something that's really important in Fujifilm in the development of this product has been our partnerships. I heard questions about the growth of the object market versus file, and there are data points out there. I don't have them either, but what we have seen is the object storage space taking over any customer that has that digital transformation or a cloud strategy, cloud forward strategy, whether it's their data sitting in-house, which would be a component of working with any number of these vendors, highlighted in the light green there, or their data sitting in the cloud services. That data has moved to object storage. So what we're really looking at is our partnering with these companies like Cloudian, Caringo, or Datacore now. I apologize for having the old name on there. NetApp or Scality, is that they have seamlessly integrated the capabilities to do cloud tiering, and that works seamlessly with our product. Where we're going with this is that this isn't just a singular, these are just an example of some of the products that do work with us today that we have tested. We have documented down to the smallest detail the experience a customer is going to have, how they implement it, and how it's going to work, and gone to the public and said, here's press releases about all of these solutions together. And these are important alliances for us. And I'm going to talk in the next couple of slides about the use cases. I kind of want to promise you that a little bit, about how working with these different vendors really simplifies much of what our customers are challenged with in managing their data, but it becomes an automatic and very seamless process with them. So just to kind of move forward with a little bit about the use cases, probably the first use case we have seen and got engaged with right away, whether this is NetApp storage grid in the middle and the data coming in is research data or any kind of other data sets from an HPC or even just a university archive. This mid-tier could be any number of the object storage partners that we work with. This mid-tier has always kind of represented that nearline archive for a reasonably low-cost accessible data set, but it doesn't take it to the level that some of our customers are looking for at this point. And what they're finding is that their ability to scale that nearline component of their archive is becoming harder and harder with the budget that they have. So they're looking for a way to move that data off and keep it all in a very singular presentation back to the end users. So when we add an object archive into this kind of environment and it's communicating S3, the users basically just apply a data management policy to their buckets in their object storage. In this case, it would be the storage grid, and they do lifecycle management policies. And that drives data directly into the object archive. The front end applications or end users will see nothing different happening on their system. They'll just get a little bit of different response when they do try to recover that data from that's been moved into object archive. They'll see a little bit slower response as they're waiting for their data for a couple minutes. But that's the magic is that they can apply the policies on the storage grid or any of the other platforms we're mentioning, and then move that data that has not been touched or accessed into a colder data tier, and then maintain 100% of the interaction, the user interaction, the application interaction with their data in the native way it was written into the object storage at first. So this is a seamless automated tiering process that keeps the customer, the application intact, their data set intact, and giving them the capability of taking maybe several petabytes of the object storage and scaling it seamlessly as they grow, optimizing that object storage platform by moving that cold data off onto the object archive platform and tape. Pretty straightforward use case here. This is probably the one we see the most and the one we hear about the most. We have others. This is another one in the case of using object archive as a backup target. We do have two kind of differentiations when we talk about data moving into object archive from object storage. We see it moving into us as an archive, which is basically a copy and a delete. And we also see it moving in as a fully protected replicated point for another object storage. So now we have a replication point for a swarm cluster, in this case from Kringo Data Core, to utilize the object archive. And in this case, we have it called software-defined tape, and I apologize. That is our product name that we've been using in our European market for a while. But the object archive software-defined tape product has the capability of becoming a full replication point for another object storage device. And that's, in this case, how object archive is handling that data. And this is important. We have users all over the place for this. And then I'm just highlighting the fact that object archive has multi-tenant capability. We can support up to 10,000 buckets with discrete media on the back end, which is really difficult to say if you're going into a cloud service provider. They're not going to necessarily say you have your own set of disk drives for your data, but we can say that, and we can give them the capability of managing specific customers' data. Maybe they'll even offer a secondary vaulting tier beyond the tape itself. So, and this is just a really great way that our managed service providers, a lot of the regional managed service providers, are able to kind of offer beyond S3 storage another tier that takes their data and kind of sustains it for a longer time. A lot of details in this slide that kind of fall in on the lower section here about how we can put logical servers and HA clusters together. Those are things that are very technical, and in general, we have capabilities that extend quite well to manage the multi-tenant solutions here as well. So So I don't have much more I need to do, but I did want to just cover my last kind of use case here. Its primary use is very similar. This was a university that we started with and kind of talked a little bit about how, I think maybe Ray, you asked the question about replication. One of the areas we're doing and partnering with is our software vendor, a software vendor called Starfish. And they had been in place as an incumbent data management platform for this university. And they are the capable data mover to allow replication to be happening within our system to multiple data centers with Object Archive in presence. So,
Chris, what is the minimal configuration for which it makes sense to implement this solution? I mean, we are talking about several petabytes, and probably depends on the size of the tape library as well.
Yeah, absolutely. A great question, because when we talk about minimum, we actually are looking at, we started a petabyte, and right away, the first petabyte with an investment in tape in the library will cost a little bit more, but as you scale that, the costs go way down. So as we start looking at the second, third, fourth, and fifth petabyte, we're talking about our costs being largely leveraged. A single server can manage all that data management and transfer that data. So I think when we look at it, it's partly how we have gone to market with our channel and the VARs that can leverage we can leverage their ability to provide the server technology to do some of the service work for us. But from our customer standpoint, we see kind of that petabyte being a very economical petabyte. And then when they start looking at, well, I might need 2, 3, 4, 6, or 10, we're talking about pricing that's probably 1/5 or 1/6 of the cost of disk-based object storage.
Do you provide the software and the tapes, or
yes.
So is it a bundle in the end? So
yeah, they are bundled. So if you come and say, I need a 5 petabyte solution, we will sell you. We'll send 10 petabytes of media with that. So